Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Good morning, GLE to the double N. How are you today?
To the double N.
To the double N. What's going on, my friend?
Double shot espressos.
What's going on? How are you?
Great to be here. Great to talk about some steps, some tips.
Yeah, you know, we're at the fun part of the step process for me anyway. I love steps 1, 2, and 3. They're the cornerstone of my program. I think, they go in order. I love this line, the steps of a 12-step recovery program, they're in order. I mean, they're not bullets. They're not 12 bullets. They're 12 steps. They're sequential. And I guess, with anything, the first steps are the most important. They kind of point you in the right direction, right? I mean, I could take 3 steps to the wrong direction. And, so I love the first 3 steps. They point me in the right direction. So
yeah, and it's very important to work. I love when you said that they're in order. They're in order for a reason. Right. And, I can remember my first rehab. I remember tapping my watch to my temporary sponsor. And I'm like, dude, we need to get these through these 12 steps. I got 3 more weeks before I have to get back to work.
I got a tea time.
I know, I have a tea time.
I got a tea time.
And
let me out of here.
They're in order for a reason. And they're also, it makes sense to work them with a sponsor, of course, right? To get a sponsor who can help you work them. But to just rush through them, it reminds me of I have a wonderful 14-year-old daughter. She's learning how to bake, and each week she bakes something. And I tell her, I said, hey, look, if the recipe says 35 minutes, leave it in for 35 minutes.
That's right.
If you pull it out in, 12 minutes, you're not going to like it, right? And it reminds me, because I'm working with some guys and steps, 8 and 9, making amends. They're not even done with step 2, and they see their Aunt Gertrude at a party that they puked on last year, and they're now going up and making their amends, and they can't handle it when she doesn't respond the way they want her to.
Right.
So I love what you said. I love how you framed it, and I love the cornerstones, steps 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, it really is. And, for me anyway, I parked here for quite a while. I spent my first 30 days of sobriety in a rehab facility, and the focus was on the first 3 steps. So fortunately for me, I didn't have a sponsor yet at that point, right? Because I'm in rehab, but my sponsor, or at least my community, was my sponsor, right?
Sure.
And so a lot of worksheets, a lot of kind of taking a little, not step 4 inventory, but kind of taking some inventory was very helpful to me. And the other thing that jumped out at me with your introducing comments there was, yes, it's extremely important to work with a sponsor, and maybe some people are comfortable with the word sponsor, maybe not, but I look at it as
coach.
Yeah, right.
Mentor.
You just nailed it. It's a self-help coach. It's a somebody who's been there before. So if I were gonna go learn to golf, I'd watch a video with a golfer who's on the tour and get tips from him, because I want to do it the right way. And the sponsor, there's no wrong way to do the steps, I don't think. I think am I wrong? I mean, is there a wrong way? I guess there is wrong ways to do the steps, but if I look at my sponsor, and he's been sober for 20 plus years, and he's teaching me what worked for him 20 some years ago, to me, I can put some weight into that guidance.
Yeah, I would say framing it that way, there's no wrong way to do the steps.
Right.
I would say a wrong way to do the steps is doing them yourself with no guidance at your own time frame. This is not a self-help book.
Right.
This is a program where, in fact, we've used the word we numerous times, and we always will, because we no longer do this alone.
Right. And that's the first 3 steps. You're right. Step 1, we reviewed a couple of weeks ago. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And then step 2, we well, I'm sorry, it doesn't say that. It says came to believe that a power greater than ours,
right?
That ourselves would restore us to sanity. And now this week we're going to talk about 3 made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. And it's. I like the way it goes. It's been taught to me over coffees. And step 1 is I can't. Step 2 is He can, and step 3 is let Him. And the notion of turning things over for me was probably the hardest, yet ultimately the easiest element of my recovery. I know it sounds like there's conflict there, but it was done for me. Step 3 was done in defeat, and it was the hardest thing to do because I had embraced my own power and my own will. I was a kid growing up that was taught to do things on my own. As I shared with you before, I lost my father as a toddler, and so I was raised by a single mom there for a period, and so there was always an attitude and approach in our life to, if you want it, you go get it. You make it work, right? I mean, if you want food on the table, you go work 2 jobs, put food on the table. You just make it happen. And that was ingrained in me, that if you want something, you could will yourself into whatever you want.
Yeah, I remember how you categorized it, your childhood, and I think I know the words, but you said it was like a wrongly shuffled deck, like a misshuffled deck or something.
Right.
And for me, it was a little bit harder because, I guess my own ego said I have to qualify who I turn my will over to.
There you go.
I just can't do it blindly.
So you had an interview process.
Yeah, I had to interview. I had to see some resumes.
Right,
I mean,
right.
Gee, how ridiculous was that, right?
Yeah. It was always for me about proving that I could will myself to victory. I've got a small frame, but when I took the football field,
powerful though.
I know, right? So there I am out at the sand lot playing football with my friends, at 80 pounds with no equipment, and I'm charging people like Urlacher,
right.
charged an offensive lineman, and I just felt I could will myself in. And so coming to step 3 in the program, when I was told that I would have to make a decision, and that's really the beauty about the first 3 steps. They're what I like to call kind of soft actions, right? So admit, come to believe, and then make a decision. Again, nobody's asking me to do anything strenuous and to do anything extraordinary. Just in step 3, just make a decision. Just make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. And we talked a little bit the first couple of weeks about that as we understand Him. I'm really glad that the program introduced me an opportunity to pursue a higher power that I understand. And I love the fact that
it's not all the same.
It's not all the same. And, as I forge friendships in the program, very rarely do we talk about their concept of their higher power. It's not an important. Who the higher power is not the important part of the ingredient.
Higher power.
It's a higher power.
Yeah,
that's right, Glenn.
Absolutely right.
That's right.
So for me, I kind of laughed that I had to qualify, who my God was going to be, but I kind of did, and I guess that's not total surrender yet at that point. But it says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of God. Our will and our lives. So, at one point, again, I talked about being in the swimming pool, and you don't learn how to swim unless you're in the pool. I was leading high school teenagers, guys, and I was leading a group of them at our church. Again, just doing all I can, man, to immerse myself. And another one of the leaders, I'm old, and so I go out with one of the leaders, is like 22, cool guy, knows all the video game terms, and so we're out to lunch, and I thought I was going to be smart ass, and so I challenged them. I said, this whole God's will thing, I said, it's not like I said, how's this work? I said, it's not like I wake up in the morning and I go to my Outlook calendar and God fills it in for me. You know, and I was being a smart ass, but,
Yeah, right.
but halfway I really meant it.
Sure.
Like, how do you know what God's will is?
Yeah, right.
So crazy.
Not in my Outlook calendar,
crazy.
right?
So, with all seriousness, he looks right across from me, and I'm telling you, this is one of those moments, you know, where the faith dial turned a little more to facts. He looks right at me. He goes, "Well, Glenn," he goes, "I get it." You know, he goes, "But let's start with this." He goes, "You know what God doesn't want you to do?"
Oh,
And I was like stunned.
sure.
And I'm like, well, he doesn't want me to drink.
Right.
He doesn't want me to do all the bad shit I used to do when I drank.
Right.
You know. So for me, in that moment, in that restaurant over a chicken sandwich, I created the vision of a fairway, right? So that's how I envision my sober path. It's a fairway because I love golf. I don't play well.
Does golf love you?
No.
Okay.
It loves the fact that I keep the golf ball companies in business. But,
Sure.
But now I envision I'm in a fairway, and the rough and out of bounds. That's the 80% of shit that I shouldn't be doing, right? So now once I'm in the fairway, and I'm walking the sober path, there's a lot of freedom within that path. You know, I don't think my guy could care less if I have a turkey sandwich or ham sandwich. You know, a lot of freedom. You know, as long as I'm shooting for the right hole, right? And I use that example to look at my whole life, and you know, I was out of bounds trying to make these miraculous shots, and the more out of bounds I was, the more riskier the shot, and the worse that landed up. I mean, it was just disaster on disaster. So in that moment of time, I'm like, okay, this at least helps me, right? And it put me in the fairway, and I still think of that on a daily basis. Now, my life today, I swing and I miss. I swing and I shank the ball. You know, sometimes I hit great shots, you know, but I can't tell you what it does for me and my soul and whatever word you want to use, that I'm at least the confidence I'm at least playing from the right fairway for once in my life.
Right. That's a beautiful thing. My golf analogy as it relates to the program, and hopefully I could tie this into step 3, but you know, there seems to be, for me anyway, there's 90 or 100 things that go into recovery, right? So as golf, you know, it's keeping your wrist bent in and your knee straight and your hips pivoted at the right time and your head up, and there's way too many things, right?
Yeah.
And really, you know, at the end of the day, we're just taught to just swing the club. I mean, you're out there playing a game of golf.
Muscle memory.
Muscle memory. That's right. Do the right thing repeatedly. When you get out on the course, you're going to do the right thing. You know, for me, I was doing all the right things. I was doing all the wrong things repeatedly in my abuse of alcohol and drugs, and you know, they were assets, really. You know, for me, this determination, this self-will determination was an asset to me until it came to my alcoholism. The more I tried to control it, the more it tried to control me, right? So the more I try to keep my head up in my golf shot, the more my chin seems to break down. You know, a little bottle controlled this big boy, just like a little flaw in my golf game controlled my whole game. My head came up, my ball would go right. Every single time my head came up and didn't focus on that ball, it came out, you know? It made no sense to me. And so for me, the third step here talked about surrendering, right? So that's where it came to me. You know, the first step told me I can't drink. You know, I just can't take even a sip. It's all about abstinence. The second step for me was I'm not God. He is. Stop owning it. But the third step to me was when I kind of surrendered to both those first two steps and said, okay, I've got a problem with alcohol. I'm not God. I can't fix it. I haven't been able to fix it on my own. Now is the time to surrender to win, to give up total control. And was that a light bulb moment for me? No, I would say that one took a lot of readjustment, Glenn, because my head wanted to come up after I swung the club. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think I love that muscle memory, right? Because I think, you know, I listened to this dude in my first rehab in 2003, talked about like the brain science of addiction, right? And he had these, you know, rat experiments and things like that. you know, and he talks about the inner brain, right? So I think from a muscle memory standpoint, you know, there's a lot of situations I go through, I still think about drinking.
Right.
And there's people that are amazed by that. But that's my muscle memory.
That's your muscle
right?
memory.
That's my,
sure.
Because booze worked very well for me for a long period of time, right? So, you know, that's the whole right-hand, left-hand thing. I'm a right-hander, and now I'm trying to live in a left-hander world. Because my brain, when I go through situations, I'm still very aware that this is when I would have drank.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. For me, you know, I've come to a place of hope as we kind of segue and wrap up this morning, but I've come to a place of hope, and my hope, in order to have continued hope, I need to do continued effort, right? So I need to continue to surrender. And one of the things I do, Glenn, that helped me is when a scenario arises, I ask myself this simple question, you know, where am I going to find victory and peace in this situation? A, by controlling it, or B, by giving it up, right? And that's the little filter that my life goes through. Now, do I do that 100% of the time? Absolutely not. But do I try and do it 70, 80% of the time? Do I need to control the situation, or am I going to find victory and peace in the situation by giving it up? And I'll tell you what, I have enough proof now, as you said, that proof, you know, faith and fact meter, that there's always, it's always seems to me that victory and peace come out of giving it up.
Yeah, so it's funny as you talk about working on it, right? You know, if you use the golf analogy again, you know, that's why they have driving ranges, right? That's why they have the swing trainers, you know, to keep working on it. That's why we keep working this program. That's why we keep working the steps.
Yep.
That's why I do 22 things, you know. So that's my swing trainer. Yeah, and one last thing on hope. You know, when I was working the third step during 18 months, I remember one night I went to bed, and you know, for about 5 minutes, I felt a feeling that I have never felt before in my life. I mean, it was so noticeable and so different. And it was only for about 5 minutes, and the sun was setting outside my window. I was going to bed early. Sun was setting, and for 5 minutes, I felt this feeling. And the only word that I can put on that 5 minutes is peace. And it was a feeling that everything in this world was okay at that point in time. And after 5 minutes, it went away, and the head trash started to come back. But I said to myself, and I continue to say this because I need to remind myself, I said to myself, Glenn, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to get that again.
Right.
And it was a period of time, you know, I don't remember exactly, maybe it was months, you know, and I got peace again. And it's funny now, do I have peace every day, all day long? Absolutely not. But I probably get it once or twice or 5 times a week.
Right.
You know, again, just snippets, right?
Right. But, you know, I that peace thing, I was talking to my wife the other day, and this is what I was sharing with her. She said, how you doing? And that's such a loaded question.
Boy, that's a tough question,
It's a loaded question these days because, you know, I still have this vivid memory of how I was doing. And now I'm living this life that I can't hardly describe the sensation. And I think you just did. I mean, peace is probably a word that best describes where I live most of the time now. Life still happens. I mean, there's still struggles, and I still grab control of life. And I mean, there's all the. I'm a work in progress, but the fact of the matter is that this feeling that comes to the top of the cup every once in a while. That foam on the top of the cup, that good stuff, you know, is peace. It is peace, and it's worth it. But it takes work, right?
So it's funny how we used to crave the buzz, right? And now we're craving peace.
Yeah.
I mean, that's If
Right.
you
I want
talk
more.
about change, yeah.
I want more.
Absolutely.
Well,
And that's why I keep doing this stuff, because I'm greedy and I want more of this great stuff, you know, and that's why I say peace is probably my most valuable asset.
Yeah. Well, let's
That's
come
great.
back next week and grab
Hey, man,
some
I'm
more
looking
peace.
forward to it.
Grab a piece of peace.
There you go.
All right, man. Have a
See
great
you,
week,
brother.
Glenn. All right, bye.
Love you, man.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.